Well, the 2026 midterms pose a pretty significant risk for the Republican Party. They have a very slim majority in the House of Representatives, and to maintain that is going to be a very difficult task, but it's not impossible. It is very, very doable. Ultimately, historical trends are not in the favor of the Republican Party, and they could be in for a reckoning in 2026. Democrats need to net roughly 6 or 7 seats in order to take control of the House, and there is plenty of opportunity for that. But on the flip side, there is plenty of opportunity for the Republican Party. We've got some recent polling out showing where that opportunity for the Republican Party is and how they can win in the 2026 House election. Now, we first have to make a distinction. There's a pretty big difference, and we'll just pull this up real quick, between the House and the Senate. We'll start off with the Senate, only because basically the ceiling for the Democrats in the Senate is like 49 votes. That's about it. They're going to get about 40. So even if they hold Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, they pick up North Carolina, they pick up Maine, they hold New Hampshire, Minnesota, Georgia, they only get to 49. Republicans' floor is 51. If the Republicans even have a halfway decent year, they hold Maine and North Carolina and maybe pick up Georgia, 54. You're looking at some place like Michigan, it could be 55. So ultimately, the Republicans are in very, very good shape for the 2026 Senate elections. Now, the House, it's a little bit different story. Ultimately, the big question here is, can Republicans win? You're seeing a lot of the same swing districts that you saw back in 2024. You look at it, California 13. You go down here into a little place you can't even see, California 45, where you had, I believe his name is Derek Tran, beat out Michelle Steele. That's going to be a big swing election. Oregon 5 will be a swing or a competitive race. Arizona 6, New Mexico 2 will both be competitive. Colorado 3 and Colorado 8 will be competitive. Iowa will be competitive, and Iowa 1. It's been competitive since, 20? They redid the districts back in, 20? Yeah, back in 20, they redid those districts, and it was very competitive back in 20. And then she won in 2022. Pretty good. 2024, once again, pretty close election. Maine, Congressional District 2, big pickup opportunity for the Republicans. A lot in New York for the Republicans to pick up. 22, 19, 3, and 4 are all big pickup opportunities for the Republican Party here. But now, how can Republicans win in this election? Republicans can win by focusing and prioritizing economic stability and predictability. Since over the last 20 midterm elections, there have been 2 midterm elections where the party in power in the White House did not lose seats in the House of Representatives. 1998 and 2002. 2002, there was a lot of post 9/11 unity. So we're going to look at 1998. Do you know why Bill Clinton won in 1998? Part of it was because there was a lot of backlash to the impeachment, which I think if Democrats continue, ultimately they don't have a lot of power, so they can't really impeach him right now. So that Republicans aren't going to have to deal with that, where if they impeach Trump or they try and impeach Trump, then, there's a lot of backlash from the country. But it was the economic stability of the late 90s. You saw Bill Clinton. There was no deficit. They actually had a surplus while Bill Clinton was president. You saw a lot of economic prosperity and stability during that period of time, the late 90s, under Bill Clinton. And that is how they won. That is the road path. That is the map that has been laid, the groundwork that's been laid for Republicans to follow to win in 2026. Now, ultimately, the Republicans have already got off on a bad foot when it comes to economic stability, especially when it comes to the rollout of the tariffs and the way he did it. You look, this is a poll right now out of Atlas Intel. They were the most accurate pollster in 22 and in 2024, including in the swing states, not just the national vote, the swing states as well. In your opinion, is the formula adopted by the Trump administration to determine the tariffs set on each country appropriate? 57% say no. 57% say no. Look at this right here. If you're looking at, where do we have it right here? Let's look at income brackets right here. You can look at income brackets and partisanship. Only 60% of independents say, no, this was not good. Above 100,000, not good. 50 to 100,000, not good. Below 50,000, not good. Every age bracket, man, woman, other, not good. It's kind of funny. It's the people who prefer not to identify just tend to be some of the most left-leaning, but ultimately, and I think there's a lot of people on the right who agree with that. Look at this. You have Poland showing that they want Congress to take back part of their tariff the ability, the powers that are vested in them by the Constitution. That they want that. They think that the Trump policies, his tariffs, could induce more inflation in the economy, which I think most Americans are willing. As you can see here, it's going to strengthen American manufacturing. People are willing to wait. People are willing to wait and see. They want to wait and see. They want to give Trump the opportunity. But if he's just going to roll out tariffs, slapping them on every country, willy-nilly, and there is not a targeted precision behind the tariffs that are getting put on, you saw how it caused economic instability. Look at this. The S&P 500 dropped. Even though, look at this. It dropped, what, 10 percentage points? 10 percentage for no reason. Look, there are pullbacks in the market, and those happen. But when there's a pullback that happens, when it could be avoided, the American people do not like that. They do not like that, and all of the polling data shows that. There were better ways to go about the tariff rollout. You could have called up any one of these countries and said, hey, we're going to renegotiate our trade deal. If you don't, we're going to slap 100% tariff on you. Okay, I'm okay with that. Because guess what? The American people, they want it. They want reciprocal tariffs. They want us to decouple from China. They want us to bring manufacturing back to the United States for national security reasons. They want that. And remember, Republicans were elected to bring down cost. They were elected to bring down cost for Americans. And look at this. Trump is underwater on the economy by 14 points. Now, I'm not going to take any poll too seriously. You need to take it with a grain of salt, but across the board, from every poll we're seeing that the approval rating on the economy, on taxes, on the national debt is decreasing. Obviously, when it comes to immigration and corruption in China, you're seeing a lot better numbers with that. But when it comes to job growth, taxes, the economy, national debt, it is not trending in the right direction right now. But Republicans still can recover from this and make this pain temporary. There is still a lot of runway to recover from this here. And not that they're like, seriously, this is like they've cratered. They haven't cratered. Let's be honest. They're losing a little bit of support among independents. It happens. This is just kind of what happens. But ultimately, you still have to put the plans in place so you can recover. Because there can be a soft landing. You can ease this temporary pain. Because there are real world consequences for bad policy rollouts. It can be a good policy at the end of the day with maybe some tweaks that need to be made. But ultimately, if there's a bad rollout of it, it can still affect. Messaging is a big part of it. When you have people like Peter Navarro going on television saying these tariffs are going to be in place forever. You have people like Howard Lutnick saying that these tariffs are going to be in place forever. Then you have people who are actually smart, like Scott Bessent, who is saying, nope, these are negotiating tools. This is a tool to negotiate with. There's still a lot of runway to work with here. You just need to prioritize economic stability while doing that. You can push forward with roughly the same agenda, tariff in China, putting tariffs on other countries, having reciprocal tariffs, lowering trade barriers on American products, opening up other markets to American products. You can still do that while still prioritizing economic stability. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. It is not a binary choice. You can do both at the same time. That is the great thing. The actual policies that Trump is promoting, look at this. The actual policies, people love the policies. Look at this. Look, he's underwater on some big ones, like taking control of Greenland. And even though I think if the American people understood what was at stake when it came to Greenland, I think it would be a little different. But especially when it comes to Canada, the resettlement of Palestinians, territorial concessions to Russia, which that's not really up to us. That's ultimately up to Ukraine. And this is kind of funny. Removal of clean energy subsidies underwater by 22 points, but up here, removing clean energy subsidies and ramping up the United States fossil fuel production is up 26 points. So it's not necessarily just a policy, it's the policy plus a little sum. But you can see, raising tariffs across the board to protect U.S. manufacturing. I would emphasize that on national security. He's up 4 points on that. And in birthright citizenship, up a point. Allowing Schedule F to be reinstated, up 13 points. Raising tariffs on specific countries as a negotiating tactic, 11 points. You can see the actual policies he's promoting are popular. The policies are popular, but you need to prioritize economic stability while you're doing them. You can still decouple from China. You can still decouple our economy from China. You can still work for better trade deals with other countries. You can still reshore manufacturing for critical supply chains. But you need to do it in a way that voters don't start to feel the serious economic pressures because of it. Because ultimately, a majority of Americans like the idea of reciprocal tariffs. They like the idea of decoupling from China. They like the idea of reshoring critical supply chains. But they're not going to be okay slapping 90% tariffs on countries that are 90% friendly with us. Especially when we want to move the world away from China, we must make them feel that America can be a reliable trading partner. You can't just isolate China unless the rest of the world isolates China too. We can already see places like Canada looking to make trade deals with China, Greenland trade deals with China, the EU making trade deals with China. If the US is really going to isolate China and isolate them from the world, you have to do it as an entire world. One or two countries isn't going to get the job done. And look, if China decides to become more of a democratic place, if they can allow American companies to litigate in their courts, if they can put some actual job, how would you describe that? Really like labor laws in place to level the playing field for competition. Let's open up our markets to China again. Let's do it. But if China is going to have an unfair advantage over the United States, we shouldn't be trying to do more business with them. We should obviously still reshore critical supply chains. No doubt about it. We must do that. But when it comes to other things, we can do business with China. They just need to stop stealing American intellectual property, which is estimated that we lose up to $600 billion a year due to China stealing our intellectual property. Allow us to be able to litigate in your courts. And you need to level the playing field. And then I'm fine with it. But if the playing field is going to be unlevel, then we should take steps to isolate ourselves along with other countries from China. But we can't do it alone. In order to isolate China, you need to build even stronger relationships with our trading partners like Canada, like Mexico, like the EU. That's what you have to do. But the GOP will still face issues in the midterms. We know they will. Historically, we know this is going to happen. We know that Democrats are probably going to perform halfway decent in the midterms. Because like we said, historically, the GOP is not in a good place. Of the last 20 midterms, only 2 times did the party in control not lose the House of Representatives. And midterm turnout is typically lower than a presidential election, which is going to hurt the GOP. The GOP is made up now of voters that are lower propensity. It's just as simple. It is lower propensity voters. And look at this. How do you evaluate Donald Trump's performance as president? Look at this. You have 7% of Republicans saying that it's poor or very poor. You have 60%, almost 60% of independents saying that that Donald Trump is poor or very poor when it comes to the evaluation of his administration. This is what cracks me. 4% of people voted as poor or very poor who voted for Trump, when only 0.3 percentage points of people who voted for Kamala rated as excellent or great. Now, granted, Trump does have a big advantage here when it comes to 8 percentage points, just regular. So you can throw that in here between excellent, good, and regular. I think he's somewhere around 95, 96 percentage points there. But then you look at people who didn't vote. They're not good. Those are not good numbers for Trump. Who turns out in these midterm elections? People who have college degrees and higher. How are they breaking? They're breaking 60-40 for Trump on his job approval. Who turns out in these? Highly educated women, people who make more money, people who are higher on the income scale tend to turn out more. Granted, these numbers are closer. These numbers are a lot closer. Look at this. 50% poor, very poor, 51% poor, very poor, 55% below 50,000 poor, very poor. And the GOP is the party of low propensity voters. The Democrats are the party of high propensity voters. And if Republicans cannot mobilize their base, they will not win, even if the economy is great, even if they follow through on everything we're talking about, even if they do most things right. If the core of the base doesn't turn out, they're not going to win. And don't overreach. Don't take the mandate you got in 2024 and turn it into something else. The reality was you won the popular vote by 1.5 percentage points. It was a smaller national popular vote win than Biden got in 2020. Do not take the mandate that you got and see it as a mandate for everything. Don't see it as a mandate to implement even some of the most unpopular policies, like annexing Canada, or taking control of Greenland, or abolishing the income tax. Ultimately, it was a different world. Yes, would it be great if we didn't have an income tax? Sure, but the reality is that's how our country... I'm okay lowering the income tax. I don't think we should get rid of it. I think we should have a flat tax, in my opinion, a 10 or 15% flat tax. Back to Ross Perot in the 90s. We need a flat tax. But don't take advantage of it. And the GOP needs to invest heavily in the infrastructure to turn out voters. Their get out the vote operations need a lot of money behind them so they can get people out early, so they can get people to vote by mail. We know Democrats are legendary at ballot harvesting. Republicans need to have their own ballot harvesting. They did a good job in 24. But granted, Trump was at the top of that ticket. Can they do it when Trump is not at the top of the ticket? Because Democrats excel at this, whether who is at the top of the ticket or not. They excel at this. And the Republicans need to find a way to compete with them. Now, the third way that Republicans can win in 2026 is hit on the 80-20 issues. This is where Trump and the GOP have a lot of ground to work with. Since day one, Trump has hit on a lot of 70-30 and 80-20 issues. Ended DEI, stopped mass illegal immigration, deporting illegal criminals and aliens, cracking down on waste, fraud, and abuse inside of the federal government, ending transgenders in women's sports. Kind of returning us on that sense to more of a common sense policy. But you do have to find a balance so you don't alienate swing voters. Most people want to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse inside the federal government. But when you see someone like Elon Musk just taking a sledgehammer to everything, the way he would to a private company. The reality is that the federal government is not a private company. People rely on this. You need to be going at it with a chisel. A chisel. You need to analyze and then go after it with a chisel. That's what you need. And a lot of it is going to come in the appropriations bill later this year. So there's kind of, like I said, a lot of room to work with here. A lot of these cuts that the administration is going to look to make is going to come in the appropriations bill later this year. But also, hit on the 80-20 issues, the reconciliation bill. Trump, reduce taxes on, you want to energize the GOP base, cut taxes on Social Security, eliminate taxes on Social Security, eliminate taxes on overtime, eliminate taxes on tips. You want your base to turn out? That's how you do it. Extend the Trump tax cuts from 2017. We know the average American, if Trump tax cuts expired, would see a 22% tax increase overnight. Almost a $1,700 increase. Their deductions would be cut in half. Child tax credits would be cut in half. So you have to find a balance. You do have to find, they want to stop mass illegal immigration and deport criminal illegals. They want you to do that. But then when it comes to this illegal immigrant MS-13 gang member who had a withholding order. Okay, here's the reality. And I'm going to try and pull this up real quick to find this illegal immigrant. Let's see. It's kind of embarrassing that Democrats are just fighting so hard for this illegal immigrant here. They're fighting so hard to meet with what they call the Maryland man who was deported to El Salvador. Here's the reality of this guy, of Kilmar Armando Elbrego Garcia. And the New York Times says, the man who was wrongfully deported by the Trump administration last month. He is not a Maryland man. Let's get this straight. There was reasonable suspicion to believe that he was part of an MS-13 gang. He was caught when he was arrested back in 2018 with other MS-13 gang members. He has MS-13 gang member tattoos. He has 2 deportation orders from courts back in 2019, but there was a withholding put on it because he feared for his life if he was sent back to El Salvador. Now, this is the thing. Because he had that withholding order, he was not able to be deported. But when Trump, in February 14th, 2025, he designated MS-13 as a terrorist organization, which now, what that means is that withholding order may not stand up in court. But it doesn't mean you can just deport him. So what the administration needs to do, they need to bring him back to the States. They need to put him in front of a judge. They need to view the case. They need to say, look, he's a suspected terrorist. MS-13 is a terrorist organization. He has this withholding order. The withholding order should not be, we should not be able to follow this withholding order because he is a terrorist, because that is the law. Present your evidence to the judge, and they're going to rule in your favor, and then you're going to deport him again. But I think it's getting a little out of control, and Democrats are catching some ground with this guy here. He's not an American. We all know the truth about this guy. He's a terrible person. He's an MS-13 gang member. We know that. But ultimately, you need to follow due process. And by law, even though he is a suspected terrorist member, they still get due process in our country. Even though he has the deportation order, he still gets one more day in court. He does. And so Republicans, if they were smart, the Trump administration, even if they don't bring him back here, put him on a Zoom call in front of a judge. Get this in front of an immigration judge right now. Stop letting this linger on. This is only hurting the GOP by allowing this to linger on. Get a court date set. Get this over with. Deport him again. Get him out of the country. Get him out again. But that could hurt the Republicans. If the Democrats are able to really message this as they're just deporting American citizens, which is totally a lie, okay, go through the court system, do it the absolute best way. He has one more court date he has to see. He's already done it twice. Just get the third one over with so you can deport him and this can be over with. But this is what I mean. You need to find a balance so you don't alienate swing voters, especially in the midterms. Because the people who turned out in 24 are not the same people who turn out in 2026. It is as simple as that. And then the last two things I'm going to say is strong candidate recruitment. Recruit in high-quality candidates for competitive races and don't waste a lot of cash on races that aren't going to matter. Obviously, we've seen Marietta Miller Meeks is a strong candidate here. She's been able to win in this district here. She has run behind Trump, but ultimately, there's a lot she could win here. You look in California, you look Adam Gray, John Duarte. I believe he was the incumbent previously. He was a strong candidate. He was able to, you go back to 2022, flip this election. You look in places like, California 27, Mike Garcia. He was a strong candidate. Look, he won by 6.5 points there. He won real small margin here in California 25 before redistricting. And look at this, Michelle Steele. Obviously, Michelle Steele can be a very good candidate. She needs to run again in California 25. You need to make sure you need to recruit high quality, strong candidates for these competitive races. Avoid extreme Republican candidates in these very competitive races that may win a primary, but stand little to no chance in a general election. MAGA candidates will work in the districts won by Trump, but that are reliably red. You can run a very MAGA Republican in Texas 13 or Oklahoma 3. Or anywhere in Utah, basically anywhere in Wyoming. You can do it in Montana too. You can do it in North Dakota and South Dakota. You can do it in there's so many districts you can run these MAGA candidates, and you need those candidates. You need those candidates in the House because they're going to fight hard. But in these close elections, these MAGA candidates will not work in districts that are swing like this. Because the same equation does not work in close swing districts, at least not at scale. Okay, sure. Maybe does a MAGA candidate win 1 or 2 swing races or a handful? Sure. But we're talking about 20 or 30 here. You need to win the majority of these if you want to win in 2026. And then just on top, avoid unnecessary primaries against Republicans that are going to ultimately hurt the GOP in the general election. Maybe someone's not as hardcore MAGA as you want them to be. Okay, that's just kind of the reality of life. I really hate to tell you that, but that is just the reality of life. But that also means that he may be just appealing to the voters that are in his district. Or she is appealing to the voters that are in her district. Just because the MAGA candidate can win in Texas 13 doesn't mean they're going to win in New Mexico too. It doesn't. So you can either run on policy purity, and we've seen it. We've seen it, there's recent polling, and I'm going to try and find it real quick for you right now, but there's recent polling that came out that shows that Republicans their priorities are not aligned where they need to be here. And I'm just going to we're going to go to YouGov. Nope, not YouTube. We're going to go to YouGov because there was a really good poll that they had that came out, and I'm going to try and find it. And we want politics. Okay, let's just look at polls here. And it was an article that came out. Was it the Signal Leak article? It may have been this one right here. Let's see. Here we go. Democrats prioritize electability while Republicans emphasize policy agreement. This could be an issue for the Republicans. It really could be. If Republicans are not looking at electability, because electability at the end of the day is what matters. You can be 100% pure on the policy and be in agreement with the policy. But if you don't win the elections, what are you? You're sitting at home on the couch twiddling your thumbs with absolutely zero control over what's going to happen. That's what policy agreement. Look, we should have policy agreement on a lot of things. I think there are some things that should be like hard stops. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, if we're going to bicker over, someone voting for, I may have voted for Pete Hegseth, but Mitch McConnell and Susan Collins didn't. Okay. Should we punish them for that? I don't think so. Obviously, McConnell's not running, but Maine. You look at Susan Collins in Maine. A Republican is not going to win there unless Susan Collins is on the ballot. It's just as simple as that. So, and in 2026, if it turns out to be a wave election for Democrats, safe and lean seats could be competitive. Don't be complacent and be wary of a primary challenger in those seats. Don't be complacent. Even if these are strong Republican seats, don't be complacent. Don't be complacent in Minnesota 8 or Minnesota 1 or Minnesota 7. Don't be complacent in California 3. Because look at this. This is the map from 24. Let's say if Democrats, we're going to copy this and then look at the margins. Oops. Can we shift this? Let's do edit. If we shift this, if the Democrats are able to shift, let's say the popular vote shifts by 5 percentage points to the Democrats. They all of a sudden have a 37-seat majority. Now, ultimately, I don't think that they're going to. I think it'd be closer to maybe like a 3-point shift. This is where it would be with a 3-point shift for the Democrats. They win Alaska. They continue to hold in these districts here. They win places where you wouldn't expect them to win. They would flip places like Iowa 1, Iowa 3, Wisconsin 3. Look at this. Go into New York. Look at all these seats in New York that possibly could be flipped. Maine Congressional District 2 could be out of the question here, which would be very, very unfortunate for the Republican Party. And it would hurt them, and they would feel it. And so it's like, at the end of the day, to wrap things up, Republicans can win the 2026 midterms by focusing on economic results, mobilizing their base with popular policies and to get out the vote measures, and recruiting strong candidates. You have to recruit strong candidates and counter in the Democrat turnout advantage. And of course, you have to couple in there the strategic use of Trump's influence. Trump's influence may not work great in certain seats. Maybe in Colorado 3, it's not going to be great. Or Colorado 8, it may not be great. But juice the base in some of these other places that are Trump plus 20 or 30. Juice the base there. Juice the base in those. But don't take risks that are unnecessary. Avoid internal divisions to make sure that we hold the majority. So ultimately, the Republicans, they have a shot. Ultimately, they got a lot of work to do, but they've got a lot of runway to work with. So that's going to wrap things up for today, folks. Please drop down below, hit that subscribe button, make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future, and we will catch you next time.